Thank you everybody for joining us today. The time is 7:09 p.m. on Monday, June 1st, 2020. I'd like to call this Heritage Advisory Committee meeting to order. The first item on the agenda, approval of the agenda. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda? Can I get a verbal motion because I have lost sight of everyone?
Aye.
So that'd be moved by Sandra. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Bob. Thank you. Any questions or comments on the agenda?
No.
I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yes.
All opposed? Okay, so that carries. Item number 2 on the agenda, declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Bob.
I think I have one with respect to item 5.4. If we're going to enhance the beauty of the Heritage District in which I live, it could increase the value of my home or something like that. So I reluctantly am declaring an interest.
Yesterday or 2 days ago. So I'm not sure.
Thank you, Bob. I myself live in that area as well, so I may be impacted by any improvements made to the Northeast Aurora Heritage District. So I'm in the same situation as Bob, so I will declare that as well for the record. And now that that has been addressed, Linda, I don't think there's any other requirements for item number 2.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to agenda item number 3, receipt of the minutes. May I please have a motion to receive the meeting minutes of February 3rd, 2020? If I can have a verbal approval, that would be appreciated. Was that John?
Yes.
Thank you, John. So that was moved by John. Can I get a second, please?
Aye, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra. Any questions or comments on the minutes from February 3rd, 2020? I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Or any opposed? And that carries. Item number 3. Sounds like Neil has joined us. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Item number 4. I'm going to go to item number 4 on the agenda this evening, delegations. We have 3 delegations this evening who are the applicant or are representing the applicant for agenda items under section 5, matters for consideration. May I have a motion to allow each delegation to speak to their respective item just prior to the consideration of each item?
Aye,
So this,
Sandra.
thank you, Sandra. Moved by Sandra. Second.
Second, John.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's usually my dog.
Yeah. You get everything on these calls. Opposed? So that carries. So what we'll be doing now is we'll be inviting delegation A, Douglas Reeve, to the meeting. Sam, is that my understanding?
That is correct. I will admit him now.
Thank you. Sounds like we have, looks like we have Douglas Reeve. Douglas, can you hear us?
Yep. Hey, how are you?
Hey, Douglas, welcome to the meeting. So we're going to proceed with delegations. Delegation A is Douglas Reeve, co-owner of 67 Catherine Avenue, regarding item 1, HAC 20-005, Major Heritage Permit Application File HPA 2019-08, 67 Catherine Avenue. Please state your name and be reminded that you have 5 minutes for your delegation.
Yes, hi, it's Doug Reeve. You can hear me?
I hear you fine.
Great. Doug Reeve, 7 Catherine Avenue. I'm jumping on this just to say one thanks. I do appreciate the Heritage Committee and the work we do to try to retain the spirit of the neighborhood. I also wanted to say thanks to Carlson, who, when we met, we were kind of had some gaps on our design and what Carlson was hoping for or looking at. And his first question to me was, when you bought the house, did you know you were buying into a heritage district? And I thought that was great to establish, because I did know I was buying into a heritage district. And at the time it was something that really attracted us to Aurora and our house. So I think Carlson, just a shout out to him, he walked through some of our plans, what we were doing, why we were doing them, and how they might have, how he might have done it differently. But in the end, we came to an agreement, and I think he's recommended our submission in whole. So really, it was just a case of saying thanks to everybody, and it's I'm very happy with the process. So thanks.
Thank you, Douglas. May I have a motion to receive and refer the comments of the delegation to item number 1?
I will move it. Sandra?
Thank you, Sandra. Can I get a second?
Second, John.
Thank you, John. Well, we have Douglas here. Are there any questions or comments for the delegate this evening? Now, keep in mind, when we do bring this forward to matters for consideration and discuss the application, we'll have the opportunity to direct any questions to town staff. So this is just questions to the delegate. Give it 10 more seconds. So just to be clear, Linda, I am going to call a vote, or am I going to move this to, we'll move forward to matters for consideration number 1 and discuss?
You're going to call a vote on receiving and referring the comments of the delegation to item 1, and then move on to item 1.
Thank you. So I'll call a vote on receiving the delegation's comments and moving it, referring it to item number 1 under matters for consideration. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed or any opposed? And that will carry. So as Linda mentioned, we will go to matters for consideration number 1 that is relevant, or that is directly related to the 67 Catherine property.
Okay, I'd like to move that forward, moving staff recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'll move the staff recommendation. Are we going to item 1 now? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just sorry, Senator. I'm just trying to pull up the actual document on my computer here.
Oh, sure, no problem.
As a chair, it's a little bit
Kind of hard to do, but yeah, it's not easy. Take your time. We're good.
minutes.
What's that noise?
Apologies, guys. Okay. Just bear with me. I'm grabbing that document now, and I don't want to close the Zoom call. I'm just trying to be a little bit.
No worries. Take your time. It's all good.
Okay, matters for consideration. So I'd like to, matters for consideration number 1, HAC 20-005, Major Heritage Permit Application File HPA 2019-08, 67 Catherine Avenue. I am looking for a motion to receive And Sandra, I believe you had provided that. And if I can
Yeah.
get somebody to second that motion. Thank you. And the recommendation is that the Heritage Advisory Committee comments regarding heritage permit application file HBA 2019-08 received and referred to staff for consideration and action as appropriate. So right now we will, now that that's been received, open that item up for discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Bob.
I would support the request. I would just point out that number 59 and 61, 2 houses and 3 houses away from 67 Catherine, number 59 and 61 both have additions in their southeast corner that are visible from the street. Both of those houses have much larger than 6 feet additions, at least more than 6 feet that are visible. So it would not be precedent setting. It would almost fit in.
Bob,
okay.
And Bob, on that comment, I've noticed in the application that it does look they are using red brick that will match the front of the house. And you don't see that too often in a lot of the
that would be even better.
Port and Batten. So it's nice that they're keeping that same visual appeal, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to tune out for a little bit, but you'll still see me.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Sandra.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I'm pretty happy with the addition. I was looking at it again this afternoon, and staff seem to support the change. I just do want to. It looks like it's going to be a brick addition, I believe, which looks great. And to Bob's point earlier, when I did drive by, I did notice that it would actually blend in with the neighborhood in terms of the addition that's being built there, respecting all heritage aspects. So I'm thankful to the owner to look at something that they're adding to be respectful of the Heritage District and the beautiful home. It's a gorgeous home. I love it. It's lovely.
It is. Yeah, it's very nice. And it sounds like it was a very collaborative process between Carlson and the owners as well, which is always good.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just wanted to just say from my perspective, I'm very happy with this. If it moves forward, in this way, I'd be very pleased with the addition. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. John, Neil, any others who wish to provide any comments on that?
No comments from Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
I'm just curious as to when the end date might be.
For construction?
This edition.
I think now that we're under matters for consideration, I think the comment would be directed to town staff for that if they have that at their disposal.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that Carlton? Okay.
Yes. So, sorry, through Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify John's questions. When they say end date, does he mean like the construction date for the project?
John, was that the end construction date for the proposed position? Is that what you were looking for?
What is the anticipated end date for the construction?
Through Mr. Chair, I don't have the timing provided by the applicants yet. So as soon as the heritage permit is issued, then the applicants will proceed with the building permit application. But I'm not really sure about the timing because he did not advise me this information.
Okay. Thank you. So if there are no other comments, I think we can move forward on receiving and referring that as appropriate and have the minutes reflect that we had some minor comments, and we appreciate that the homeowners are keeping in with the style of the neighborhood and adding to the character of the home. So if we have a motion to
Right,
approve
excuse
that.
me. Yeah, sorry,
Yep.
I didn't hear.
Go
a
ahead, Linda.
seconder.
Sorry?
Did you get a seconder for the motion?
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Did you get a seconder for the motion
A seconder for the motion to
Yes.
to receive?
and received? Yes, and that's a
Okay, sorry,
comment.
I heard Sandra was provided the first motion to receive. Are we talking prior to? Sorry, Linda, I'm a bit confused as to.
A seconder, and I know Sandra moved the motion to receive the report and that the comments be referred to staff. I just didn't hear who seconded it.
Oh, you didn't hear who seconded it. Okay,
Right.
I think it was John.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was John who seconded it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And now, Linda, we just to confirm, we do need a motion to approve.
Yes, please.
Now that, so can I get a motion to approve now that the discussion is complete?
I so move.
Thank you, John. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
No,
Oh, I can't?
Go ahead, Linda.
no, sorry. We just needed one mover and one seconder for the recommendation. There's two clauses in the recommendation, right?
Okay.
Oh, okay,
And-
so, okay,
And they're together, not separate.
okay. Okay. So we're done then, right? It's John and I.
We're finished with this then?
If everyone's voted on it, yes.
Yeah.
Need to
So Linda, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, for your assistance.
Thank you.
So moving up to Samantha, Delegation B. If you want to bring the individual in, I will wait until you give me the go-ahead.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. The delegation for B is Claudio Brutto, and he is joining the meeting now.
Thank you. Delegation B is Claudio Brutto, representing Cedartrail Developments, Inc., regarding item number 2, HAC 20-006, Heritage Street naming for Cedartrail Subdivision, file sub 2014-04-14288 Yonge Street. Please state your name and please be reminded that you have 5 minutes for your delegation.
Thank you, committee. My name is Claudio Brutto from Brutto Consulting. We're here on behalf of Cedartrail Developments, parent company being North Star Homes. Property is on Yonge Street on the former Cannon property. And we're appealing to you this evening on behalf of North Star in terms of the name of the road or the lane. I've reviewed the report, and the recommendation that's come forward is for Phila, Phila. I'll take you back a little bit. Some of you may recall when we were first draft approved for this particular subdivision, Unterman McPhail undertook the report. There was a recommendation from your committee that the Cannon family name be commemorated by way of naming this lane after the Cannon family. So we were ready to do that and positioned to do that, but we learned later on that the name in fact had been granted to another name, another street in this particular area. So the region of York decided that they wouldn't allow it for safety reasons, and I understand that. We're not arguing that point whatsoever, but we would like to appeal to you in terms of Mr. Dodaro and North Star Homes, and have a discussion a little bit about him and his background and his contributions, and to have you think a little bit about maybe accepting either Dodaro Lane or North Star. So we prepared this really brief presentation that we can take you through, and I think that's the second page of the delegation. I do want to provide a brief history of Mr. Dodaro. He's a very conscientious builder and built over 1,600 homes in the area. Moving on to his history, he's the principal of Cedartrail, and he's a contributor to the community by large measure, having contributed to the United Way of York Region, Living City Foundation, Global Kingdom Ministry, Opera York, and the Mackenzie Health Hospital. It gives you a little bit of a character description of Mr. Dodaro and his company. Moving on from there, he's been building under North Star Homes since 1990, so it's about 30 years. He's got a good reputation. He's been acclaimed by the Build, which is the organization of new home builders in Ontario in the year 2004 and 2008, as you can see from our presentation. What are some of the reasons that I would put forth in terms of granting at least a discussion about sort of looking at possibly naming the street after Dodaro or North Star? He's granting over 2 acres of land to the town of Aurora so that it completes the environmental area. There's a knoll at the rear of this property, which constitutes most of the property. It could have been determined that he could have kept it in private ownership because this is a private development, but the decision was made early on that he wouldn't, and that he would donate that property to the town to complete its environmental features and trail system. He's also conveying the trail block on Yonge Street. It's 12 meters, consistent with your trail program. And so you'll see that on our draft plan of subdivision, that those 12 meters are being dedicated to the municipality. He's also, as part of your recommendation, going to be preparing or building a plaque to commemorate the Cannon family, and that could be either on the trail or it could be at the entrance to this particular 11-unit subdivision. I mentioned before that he's a community builder and proud supporter of the charitable foundations. I won't go on with that. And I'll just add the point about Phila, and no disrespect to the Cannon family, but it seems to me that there might be a little bit of confusion in terms of Phila, who is a sport brand, the F-I-L-A, and Phila, which is a short form for Philadelphia, as a P-H-I-L-A. So I just wanted to throw that into the hopper and have us think about any confusion that might create in the future in terms of people who live there and people who are I guess communicating by mail or courier and whatnot. So that's really it. That's the summation of my presentation. We are appealing to you just sort of to highlight the fact that that Cannon name was supposed to be for this final subdivision, and it's not. So we've kind of looked at it and said, well, is there an alternative that we could look at, and that's why we're appealing to you. And hopefully you'll have a conversation and give it some consideration. And I know as a Heritage Committee, I've been before you before, and I know you'll take our suggestions seriously. And I look forward to your discussion, and I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
Brutto. May I have a motion to receive and refer the comments of the delegation to item number 2?
Motion, John.
That's John. Can I have that seconded by?
I'll second, Neil.
Seconded by Neil. Thank you. Any questions or comments for the delegate?
Yes, I have a question for Claudio. I was trying to listen to what you were saying, Claudio, but you were rather muffled. I don't know whether anybody else found the same difficulty, but I missed the reason.
I apologize. My earpiece is just escaped my ears. Is that any better? I can hear you well.
It should be a very short answer, I guess. The reason for the renaming Was it because the old name didn't fit anymore, or you wanted to recognize Mr. Dodaro?
John, through the committee chair to you, no, we wanted canon. Absolutely, we did. And we were in line to be granted canon. But I guess over the goodness of time, the name had been put forward. And Brookfield, I think it's Brookfield that ended up getting the name canon. But absolutely, we were in favor of canon.
Do we have any other questions for them? Go ahead, Sandra.
Just for clarification, through Mr. Chair to Mr. Brutto, just so Mr. Dodaro obviously has done a lot of, he's a quite a big contribution to our community. And just to clarify, are you looking for a name with Dodaro in it, not necessarily Fila, right? So is that what I just want to clarify.
Just
want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're appealing to, Councillor, is that we had lost out on canon, and we felt that we would come before you to seek an alternative to Fila. And it's no disrespect to Philadelphia, but we just felt that if we weren't able to get canon, that we would come to you and suggest two names, which for us would, well, for Mr. Dodaro would be an honor to have his family name aligned with Aurora. And that's simply the reason for it. It's not an ego thing, it's not that. North Star would work as well. But I think the town has gone to great lengths to recognize people that have contributed in large measure to the municipality, not just from a historical standpoint, but even sort of a more recent history where somebody has done a lot of good work in the community. And that's certainly what he intends to do here is build a really, really nice subdivision. We'll put the plaque and the 12-meter trails. So all these things are good things. And we just, and to dedicate the environmental lands. We thought it might be something that we could come forward to and say, you know what, can you consider this favorably?
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, can I make a quick note?
Yes, go ahead, Carlson.
So through Mr. Chair, I just want to make a quick note. First of all, I want to thank Claudio for his presentation. Town staff definitely appreciate Cedartrail's contribution to the town 100%. But I just want to quickly explain the context and the reason why we are going through this process right now. Because in the past, if you remember, this property was previously listed on the town's heritage registry, and it was removed by council subject to a number of conditions. And one of the conditions is very specific, that the Cannon farmhouse has to be commemorated by street naming. So it's a very specific condition. Although, of course, we all recognize the contribution of the Cedartrail development, but their names are not associated with their Cannon family, and therefore it would not satisfy council's condition. However, with that being said, I want to make a quick note is, Claudio also mentioned, there is already an existing street which is located immediately south of the subdivision. It's called Cannon Valley Trail. And that street, as I understand, was purposely named this way to commemorate the Cannon family. So perhaps when this subject property was undergoing the delisting process, council must have missed the fact that there is already an existing street immediately to the south. So for this reason, Claudio is proposing two names that are not associated with the Cannon family. Now, I think that right now staff recommend that the option here is that Claudio should make a delegation to council to request that this condition be waived, given there is already an existing street that commemorates the Cannon family. Otherwise, if this condition is not waived by council, the condition will remain in effect, and the names proposed by Claudio would not be able to satisfy the condition. I hope I'm clear.
Very
Thanks, Carlson.
good. May I?
Yeah, go ahead, Senator. I'm wondering if we have no more questions for the individual, if we should move this to matters for consideration so it's captured in the right area of the agenda.
perfect.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions for Mr. Brutto? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Receiving?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. So what we'll do now is move to matters for consideration for this item. So under matters for consideration, item 2, HAC 20-006, Heritage Street naming for Cedartrail subdivision file sub 2014-04, address 14288 Yonge Street. Recommendation is that the report number HAC 20-006 be received and that the Heritage Advisory Committee's comments regarding Heritage Street naming for Cedartrail subdivision file sub 201404 at 14288 Yonge Street be received and referred to staff for consideration and action as appropriate. Can I get a motion?
John?
Thank you. Thank you, John. Can I get a second? Thank you, Sandra. And I think it's appropriate at this time that we move into a discussion on this item. Carlson, thank you during delegations for that context. That was much appreciated. Does anybody have any comments or would like to open up the discussion on this item?
I have a question for the planner, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Neil.
Okay, through you, Carlson, the name Phila or Phila, is it a diminutive or an abbreviation for another name, or is that the full name of the Mrs. Cannon?
Through Mr. Chair, Phila is an abbreviation. The full name is Philadelphia Cannon. So
Okay.
Philadelphia is the wife of Michael Cannon, who has lived in the Cannon farmhouse the longest among the family. We think that if we're going to commemorate the Cannon family, Philadelphia's contribution to the family deserves to be recognized.
And so why did we, I'm just curious why it was used, why we're using Phila or Phila. Was she commonly known as Phila? Is it a more affectionate term that would be more familiar to the town, or?
Well, in the heritage impact assessment, when we did the research, she was commonly referred as a Phila.
Okay.
Of course, if the committee feels that it's appropriate to refer to the full name Philadelphia, I don't think there would be an issue. We would just have to submit the name to York Region for comments.
Okay, thank you. If I can just further comment on this, I remember this application when I was on the last committee. We went out and we viewed the house. We tried to maybe see if we could keep it. It was explained to us that by I believe the gentleman tonight who's speaking, that because of carry-on warranties and so on, they didn't feel it was worth saving, and that the town had recommended initially that the house be demolished and an exact replica be rebuilt, but the committee didn't want that, and we agreed that using elements of the house maybe to create a signpost or a marker of sorts would be more appropriate as an option. And the street naming, as you mentioned earlier, was one of the other conditions, along with the others in the list. And I think I do want to support the staff recommendation, whether it's Phila or Philadelphia. I don't really have a preference. But I think that my opinion is that we should try to keep the heritage or the history of the farmhouse, of the family, the way we had intended. And I understand that this gentleman, Mr. Dodaro, has contributed, but I think that given that this is a heritage, we're basically using a heritage property that we thought was important to the community. I think we should stick to the plan and just follow through. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. That's very good context. Any other comments? So Carlson, I'm going to direct a quick question to you. You've put forth a comment around specific considerations that would not satisfy council for council's conditions for Canyon Valley Trail, and you are recommending that there be a delegation to council. Is there any requirement for us to comment on that during this item?
So, Mr. Chair, first of all, this is not really staff's recommendation. I was just laying out, the options that the applicant have. If they do want to pursue with the names that they're proposing, they should make a delegation to council to waive that condition. But at this time, because the condition is still in effect, and in order to satisfy the condition that was imposed by council, we have to use a name that's associated with the Cannon family.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
Go ahead,
Question.
Sandra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for the noise, my dog is. Just a question. So I understand what the ask is, and I think, as Neil mentioned earlier, there's a little bit of history, and we do have to satisfy the original council requirement. Although I know that there's a similar name of the Cannon farmhouse, and we're going to work with the name of Fila to again commemorate and honor the property. I guess just a question. There's no reason why the name Dodaro couldn't be on the regular listed street names if there's a reason. I don't know what the policy is through you, Mr. Chair, to Carlson. Do you know what the street naming policy is? We have one. So I don't know if there's in here where this developers contributed much trails and open so I don't know if you wouldn't mind commenting on that.
So through Mr. Chair, I understand that we do have a street naming policy, and every time if a name is being proposed, we will submit it to our GIS departments, and they will work with York Region to determine if that name can be accepted. And my understanding is the name Phila has already been submitted to the region for review, and they don't have any concern with this name.
Okay, good. Okay, and I guess just the only thing is you're right. Okay, that's fine. Thanks, thanks, Jeff. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, go ahead, please.
No, I think that was good. I just no, I understand. I get the ask, and I think the summary says it all here. And I think it's just our comments that will go to council. And then if this does get a delegation from the developer, Mr. Brutto, then council will make a decision on that. But at this point, it is sort of stating what the original intent was. So thanks.
Yeah, and just for clarification for the group and for myself, we are moving forward in the staff's recommendation. Is that what we're, just to be clear, what we'll be voting on this evening? Okay, if there are no more comments.
I have a question.
Go ahead, John.
To Carlson. Carlson, has this name been used before, Dodaro, anywhere for a street name?
Through Mr. Chair, unfortunately, I don't have that information. I need to confirm with our GIS staff. I mean, I can speak to the GIS staff and provide the information to the Heritage Committee after this meeting if necessary.
Okay, it was just a question, if it had been used before, that's all. And I wonder whether the staff must have a record somewhere.
Thanks, John.
Can I speak? I can.
Going over the recommendation we've received, and our comments have been noted, and they'll be referred to staff for consideration and action as appropriate. So if there are no more comments or no more discussion points in this item, we'll take a vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, John.
Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. So we will now be moving back up to delegations. And Sam, I will give you a second to bring Mr. Wayne Morgan in.
Ooh.
See Wayne on the screen. Wayne, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Delegation C is Wayne Morgan, agent for owner of 15074 Yonge Street, regarding item number 3, HAC 20-007 Heritage Designation and Consent Application for 15074 Yonge Street.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Delegation C is Wayne Morgan, agent for owner of 15074 Yonge Street, regarding item number 3, HAC 20-007 Heritage Designation and Consent Application for 15. Are you guys hearing feedback?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Delegation C is Wayne Morgan, agent for owner of 15074 Yonge Street, regarding item number 3, HAC 20-007. Hello, I just want to confirm that somebody can hear me. I just heard my introduction repeated back to me. Sandra, Neil, John.
I can hear you.
It's good.
I do hear you, Jeff.
Okay, did you get that repeat of what I said?
Yep, we heard it. It's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I think I may have had some technical difficulties there, but I did introduce the delegation. I did hear it come through. So, Mr. Wayne Morgan, can you please state your name and be reminded that you have 5 minutes for your delegation, and feel free to proceed.
I'm Wayne Morgan. I'm the heritage planner that prepared the cultural heritage impact assessment for this application. And the property, or the house on the property, was referred to as Poplar Villa when it was first built, but by 1931, everybody in Aurora was referring to it as the Chateau, and that was the name that was commonly used from 31 on. Next slide, please. I just wanted to highlight that I have had a long experience in heritage conservation in Ontario, and I've shown photographs of 3 of the properties that I've dealt with, 2 of them which are quite relevant to this application. The one on the right is the Distillery District in Toronto. I hope you've all been to it. It's the largest collection of industrial buildings and 19th century industrial buildings in Canada. And why it's relevant to this application is that it started out as one designated property, lots of buildings, but one property. And it's proceeded to develop so that there are a number of condominium properties on it, but it's still just one property. And the city is able to manage the heritage landscape quite well with the one designation. The property on the left in Peterborough is similar to yours. The owner wanted a severance. I did a cultural heritage impact assessment. It was a designated property. And I said, okay, it's designated, but you should get a heritage easement agreement on it to provide a higher level of protection. And the Heritage Committee in Peterborough agreed with me, and they also agreed with the rear severance. And the property in the center is the Don Jail. It's where you're gonna go if you don't agree with me. But it's now part of Bridgepoint Hospital, and so it's been converted to a hospital, and there is a heritage easement agreement on it. So those are relevant. Next slide, please. So in my research, at the point that I did my study, it was just a listed property and there was not much information in your files about this property. So I had to do a thorough research on the property. And at the end of the day, I agree that the property is worthy of protection under the Ontario Heritage Act. But there are minor differences between what I found and what the consultant that the town hired. One of the differences is that the cladding on this building on the first floor is not concrete block. It's what's known as cinder block. And if you take a close look at it, you can actually see the bits of coal that are in the block, which was the aggregate used to form those blocks. The other thing is I found out who the builder was during the process of researching it, which your consultant didn't know. And that was James Knowles, who built a number of heritage buildings on Wellington Street West and the house immediately south of Hillary House on Yonge Street. Next slide, please. So the house has value and the landscape has value. And I agree with your consultant that the front yard has heritage value. I looked at it from a number of perspectives, including historic aerial photographs. And that front yard is extremely important in that it allows views of this house from Yonge Street. However, I don't agree that the side yards are heritage attributes. And I don't believe that they're required to maintain either the view of the house from Yonge Street or to maintain its park-like setting. Next slide, please. So here you see some of the landscape changes that have occurred with this house over the years. 1917, shortly after it was built, and the sign Poplar Villa appears on the veranda. Then 1965 on the right, and then 1975 when Yonge Street was widened to 4 lanes and that concrete retaining wall was put in. And the original owner's objective was to have terracing down to Yonge Street. Well, that terracing is now gone as a result of the concrete wall. Nevertheless, you can still see the house from Yonge Street. Next slide, please. So here's the proposed severance, 2 parts. So I've shown it in plan and shown it on an aerial photograph. So there's a part 1 and a part 2. Next slide, please. So the house is proposed to be kept as part of the proposed severance. It would be on part 1. There'd be no demolition, no relocation, or no alteration of the house. And I am recommending that the owner enter into a heritage easement agreement to protect that part 1, to protect the house and the property. The HEA, that's what we refer to as the heritage easement agreement, provides permanent protection. Council is final decision authority for any changes affecting the heritage attributes, and there are maintenance and insurance protections, but you can't get an HEA unless the owner agrees. And in this case, the owner is agreeing provided that they get the severance. Next slide, please. So there's been some dispute about the importance of an HEA. This is the first time I've encountered a situation where they've said, we're satisfied with designation, we don't need a heritage easement agreement. I just want you to understand the level of protection that you would be getting with an HEA. It's greater than with designation. The heritage easement agreement, council's decisions are final. There is no appeal possible. Under designation, the owner can appeal anything, including whether or not it's designated, or if they don't agree with the alterations that council has approved, they can appeal. So there is that appeal process, but not with an HEA. An HEA also requires insurance on the property and that the municipality be a named party in the insurance policy, so that if there is damage to the building, the town can direct the proceeds to restoration. If with designation, the town has no say in the insurance policy or the proceeds from the disposition of the insurance policy. In terms of maintenance, under a heritage easement agreement, there are clauses in a heritage easement agreement that give council clear legal authority to maintain the heritage attributes on the property and to actually go in and do the work if the owner won't do it and then charge it back to the owner. Now, under designation, you do have a bylaw, and that's great that you have a bylaw that protects the heritage attributes of heritage buildings, but decisions of council can always be appealed under that bylaw. So the HEA is a much stronger protection for the property. And in fact, there is one that I'm currently aware of in Aurora, and that's Hillary House, and it's the Ontario Heritage Trust holds the easement on that property. Next slide, please.
So Wayne, I just want to jump in as the chair and remind you that every delegation has 5 minutes and we're currently over. So if we can try and move to maybe a minute or two to wrap this up, that'd be appreciated.
Okay. I'm concerned about the park-like setting of the house. The next slide, please. So my recommendations would override the zoning permissions with respect to the setback from Yonge Street, the height of the new building, and the setback of the new building from the house. So I've recommended conditions that will maintain that park-like setting. Next slide. So no house can be built on part 2 in front of the blue line, between the blue line and Yonge Street. So that whole front yard will be maintained. Next slide. The height of the new building would be no higher than the ridge of the hip roof of the chateau. So the conical roof would still remain the prominent element on the property. Next slide, please. And I've recommended that the new building be set back a minimum of 4 meters from any part of the chateau. So that overrides the zoning bylaw. Next slide. So there you see it in summary. The front yard would be maintained. There would be no change in that front yard. You'd still be able to view the house from Yonge Street, and Aurora has the tools to enforce the maintenance of the front yard on part 2 as it would be a designated property. Last slide, please. So I'm recommending that the Aurora Heritage Committee support designation of the property, and I'd suggest using my statement of cultural heritage significance, which you'll find starting on page 35 of my assessment, and that you support the proposed severance subject to the owner of part 1 entering into a heritage easement agreement, and that any new development on part 2 be subject to the front yard conditions and the height and setback that I have specified. Thank you, and I apologize for going over time.
It's okay, thank you, Wayne. May I have a motion to receive and refer the comments of the delegation to item number 3?
Aye, Sandra.
Moved by Sandra, second.
John.
Seconded by John. So we will have an opportunity to discuss with Carlson when we get to matters for consideration, but do we have any questions or comments for the delegate at this point in time?
Yes, John.
Go ahead, John.
I listened with great interest. I did visit the chateau, or Poplar Villa as it was known, during the winter time when it was really cold and freezing cold. But anyway, quite a remarkable building, and it would be sad to see it covered up or not being able to be viewed anymore. So that last, or the second to last slide, this is Wayne, the segment in the bottom left, that's the area that you're suggesting development take place, is that correct?
I'm sorry, which slide are you referring to?
Second to last. It was a plan view, and it was in orange or yellow. There was like a pie-shaped.
That pie shaped was that there would be no change in the front yard in that area.
So where does the actual new development actually sit?
So if you go back a couple of slides. Right there, that's it. So that there'd be no development between the blue line that you see there and Yonge Street. So it would be set back in line with the chateau.
So in other words, the development would be to the south of that dotted blue line, parallel to Yonge Street. Is that?
That's actually to the west of the blue line. Okay, south is on your left-hand side.
Yes. Oh, south.
So west is towards the top.
Yep.
So what I'm saying is that there'd be at least a 20-meter setback from Yonge Street, which would place any new development to the west of that blue line.
Yes, okay, it makes sense. Yep.
Thanks, John. Any other questions for the delegate?
Jeff, I have one.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Wayne, thank you very much for your overview. And first of all, I want to thank you for putting that setback restriction in. I really appreciate that because that does leave the home in its, more of a prominent view of the Poplar Villa versus, development in front. You'll lose that context. I think by having that setback will allow that to be still a prominent piece of the development. I love the fact that the height is actually at the point before the turret, like right at that height level. I really thank you for that because that will again make the Poplar home higher than the rest of the development. So it will allow that prominence in that heritage building property to be to stand out. So I think that's really important. Just want to highlight some of the things I find very positive about your report. And the other one, the HEA, which I think is really interesting. And I'll speak to that when we get to it from a staffing perspective, but I appreciate the information you're bringing forward because although there's some protection there from a natural policy from here, the heritage, the 5, but from the level of heritage protection, I should say, but having that additional, I love what you say that there's no chance to appeal. And I appreciate that feedback because it allows us to know that we have extra protection with this property and this prominent building in Aurora. And like you said, we called it the Chateau for years and years and years. And, we still call it the Chateau, but so I just wanted to highlight those positive things that you brought forward in your report. And there's many more, but I just wanted to say from my perspective, I'm nowhere near a heritage planner, but I appreciate the fair report here that helps me ultimately make some decisions. I know that there was one from your perspective, you believe that the to the south and north of the buildings, the development there in your perspective isn't as significant as what we think, what staff is stating. So from your perspective, you're suggesting that the front part of the villa facing Yonge Street be obviously that's standing out, but on either side, you're feeling that we're not in bad shape. But sorry, before I answer, probably answering my own question here, because you put the setback 20 meters, I think that's what's going to help. So I don't know if staff knew that yet. So I think that's really imperative. So just from your perspective, you feel that setback and development on the north and south parts of the building still maintains the heritage significance of the chateau?
Certainly, yes. In my opinion, You'll still be able to view the chateau from Yonge Street. It will still be in a park-like setting. Any new development will be less, shorter in height than the chateau. So the chateau, and particularly that conical roof, will remain the prominent elements that you see from Yonge Street. And I guess the other thing I'd add is that, you know, in your official plan, this whole area is an intensification area, and you're allowing no setbacks from side yards, from Yonge Street. So this is a pretty unique property, and I'm trying to respond to the heritage values of the property while still acknowledging that there is some development possibility on the property.
Right, right. No, thank you very much. At this point, I really appreciate the presentation. I see it as fair right at the moment. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. Thank you, Wayne.
Jeff, I have a further comment for Wayne.
Go ahead, John.
Wayne, echoing Sandra's comments, I want to applaud the fact that you've got the owners to agree to the heritage easement agreement, knowing that, and I've read the one at Hillary House, it's very, very stern and very, very binding. So with that in place, it should protect the chateau against any alteration. The one question I have with the new development, although you've got a height restriction, is this if it's going to be something like, I'm just guessing now, a flat roof, that might be the height of the roof, but in many of these buildings, they have air conditioning chimneys and vents on the top, which project 3 or 4 feet above. Do you know if this new building will have any of those kind of projections sticking up?
No, there are no plans for the new building.
Okay.
So this is just the envelope within which it can occur. So when it comes to final design, my suggestion would be that it come back to the committee because it's adjacent to a heritage property. And in fact, it will be on a designated property because the front yard will be designated. So it will be an alteration. It will come back to you.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Any more comments?
Jeff, Mr. Chair, Neil.
Go ahead, Neil.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, thanks for your report. It's quite toothy, and I enjoyed reading it. And thank you for explaining how the easement would work and how it would essentially be more protective than our bylaw. And so what I understand is that the frontage, the setback would be protected as the structure of the house would be, even though it would be shared ownership of that front yard. There is a concern that having 2 owners would be possibly problematic in terms of maintenance of the heritage attributes, and I guess also maintenance of the property standards. But the easement, would that give us protection? Would it sort of ease that worry, in your opinion?
The heritage easement agreement would apply to part 1, where the house would be and the front yard. So you'd have to deal with front yard conditions through the designation bylaw. But as I was saying, with the distillery district in Toronto, there are a number of property owners, but the city seems to be able to deal with landscape features where properties join to ensure consistency. The owners of part 2 would be buying a designated property. They'd know that the front yard was the important feature, and I've even specified that the walkway and the steps up from Yonge Street are to be retained. So you know, they'd walk into it knowing that. And yes, the town would have to ensure consistency between the two parts.
Okay, thank you. There's one other thing from your report. I was glad to see that you thought the interior elements that you listed were important. That was something in the previous report from the town's consultant. They didn't feel it was necessary to include things like the mantle, the built-in cabinet, that sort of grill work in the front hallway, the staircase. Just one more question about that. Do you feel there's any point in designating the layout? I've worked in a couple homes in the city of Toronto that are designated, quite a bit older, mind you, and we weren't allowed to move any doorways or walls inside the home. Do you feel that in this case that would be something to look at as well?
I mean, the layout may have to be readapted to a modern use. The second floor, I lost count of how many bedrooms there are on the second and third floor. That may have to be changed to accommodate a new use. So from my perspective, I think the important thing is the features that are listed. They're important to the character of the property, and if those features are maintained, then I think you're doing a good job on conserving the heritage of this property. But if they're going to come in and alter the property, they would have to come back, and you have the opportunity to see what's being proposed. And there may be a situation where a change is appropriate, but it retains the heritage elements that I was talking about, like the mantles and the built-in cabinets. So I mean, one change I can see right away is you've got in the front hall, you've got a firewall there, a glass firewall, and it would be nice to remove that firewall and have the original grill work and the entrance to the building. So, you know, by identifying these features, it gives you the opportunity to review whatever a future owner may be doing or proposing to do with the house. So I don't think it's essential to do the room, to specify that the room layout is important.
Okay, I see what you're saying. That essentially the decorative elements would need to be removed in order to replan the main floor. I was more concerned about the main floor than the other floors. I just have one more question if I have time, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
Given that the home is on what's called a park lot, and that deliberately the home was built in the center of that, you know, maintaining ample space around, and I know that you don't think the side yards are important, but by severing the lot on the south end the way it is, it upsets the the symmetry or the balance of the property, and I wonder how. I mean, I don't. That's the part I'm struggling with, and I wonder if you have maybe convincing argument for that the site plan now is going to be changed, and the way the house is situated now is going to be maybe at a disadvantage on one side, not having the light and the space around it.
When I looked at this property, through you, Mr. Chair, when I looked at the property, what I considered to be a value was what I could see from Yonge Street. That was the important public view. And what I'm proposing will maintain that public view. Yes, there'll be an imaginary property line in that front yard, but for all intents and purposes, when you're viewing the property, it should still look like the front yard from that house. So there will still be a prominent view of a front yard to that house. And yes, there will be a building towards the south side of the chateau, but it'll be of less prominence than the chateau. But you will still have a view of it, in my opinion, in a park lake setting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Neil. Do you have any more comments or questions for the delegate this evening? We'll take that as a no, and I will call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that carries. Moving to matters for consideration related to this item. So matters for consideration, item number 3, HAC 20-007 Heritage Designation and Consent Application for 15074 Yonge Street, Poplar Villa. Recommended that report number HAC 20-007 be received, and that the Heritage Advisory Committee's comments regarding the heritage designation for 15074 Yonge Street be received and referred to staff for consideration. The motion to receive these items?
Aye.
Thank you, Sandra. We get a second.
John?
Thank you, John. We're going to open it up for discussion now.
Mr. Chair.
Hey, Bob.
Hi, Jeff. Some of you know, but not all, I'm trying to juggle 2 meetings at the same time, and the school board one is winning. Given that I'm not going to speak to item 4, I would just simply, I would like to give my input on number 3, and then I'm going to say goodbye so that I can focus on the other meeting. I'm trying to listen to 2 conversations at once. I would support designation of Poplar Villa, the property. I do not support severance, but I'm going to say goodbye.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay. I wish you well, folks.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks,
Enjoy
Bob.
the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
So to reiterate, Bob does not support designation, or sorry, he supports designation, but does not support severance of the property. Are there any other members of the group who wish to comment on the item?
Jeff, if I may.
Go ahead, Neil.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for staff. And I just want to, I want to ask, what are the permitted uses of a property, would be permitted on that property if they were granted severance?
Neil, to build on that, if I may, I'd be interested in, as well as maybe Carlson, you can tag on the comment around the intensification of that area, because I think that has that's interesting as well.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the property is zoned in a prominent destination, which permits a wide range of non-residential uses. I'm just pulling up the zoning bylaw. If you just can bear with me 1 second. Sorry about that, I'll be right there. So the property is zoned PDS1, which stands for Promenade Downtown Shoulder Central Commercial. And it permits a range of non-residential uses such as art gallery, bed and breakfast, clinic, commercial schools, daycare centers, single detached dwelling. And also financial institution, fitness center, garden center, etc. So it's a very comprehensive list.
Quite broad.
Yes, because
Yeah.
this area, as mentioned, is intended to be used for intensification. So that's why this zoning would permit that, those variety of uses.
Okay, so if I can follow that up, I have two follow-up questions. You just mentioned garden center. So if that was to be a garden center, and maybe that's highly unlikely in our current situation, but could they use then the front lawn as a commercial space, being that they're a garden center? You know, springtime, bring all your plants out front, et cetera, et cetera.
So through Mr. Chair, if council and the committee do support Mr. Wayne Morgan's recommendation to impose those development restriction, what we are going to do is we will ask the applicants to probably enter into a development agreement with the town that would apply to the severed parcels. And notwithstanding the current zoning regulations, we would impose very specific development restrictions, including setbacks from the street, which would be 20 meters as recommended by Mr. Wayne Morgan. And then the building height must not exceed the heritage building. And also the building would maintain at least a 4-meter separation from the heritage building, et cetera. And these are, of course, just some of the development restrictions we will put in there. But we may have some additional restrictions to ensure the protection of the heritage building. And one thing for sure is, sorry.
No,
sorry,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so you mentioned about the front yard landscape space. So in the development agreement, we would include clauses and terms in there to ensure that that area would be undisturbed, would not be permitted to accommodate any developments. And
so
another
even a restaurant?
No developments at all. And also another level of a restriction is there would be a heritage destination bylaw registered on title, right? And that destination bylaw would include the front yard space as a heritage attributes that needs to be protected. So because of all these restrictions, there will be no developments permitted on that front yard space.
Okay, that you speak of a development, but a temporary use as a commercial space or an extended, you know, if it's a restaurant and they want to put tables out on the front, would they be allowed to do that? Well,
in this case, through Mr. Chair, we will draft a development agreement with very strict terms to ensure that absolutely no developments, even temporary, would not be permitted in that space. If this is the council's direction to allow, or the committee adjustment to allow the severance proposal, we would make sure that these requirements are secured.
Okay, and one more follow-up question, Carlson, through you, Mr. Chair. The property that's just south of that on the corner, I believe it's a law firm, that property, could somebody or the current owner of that property then buy the severed property and join the two together and build something, you know, on both properties, essentially? Could they be attached?
Through Mr. Chair, this may be a legal question, but my understanding is once the development agreement is registered on title, it will stay on title. Even if they merge the property, it will still remain applicable. However, I'd like to confirm with legal departments just to make sure this is correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's all I have for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil. Do we have any other comments, questions, discussion points? Neil, I do share your concerns about the front of the property and the potential down the road to have that property join. I also share your concerns about the size of the property and the balance by adding another structure to the south side. I myself support designation. I do not support the easement at this point in time. I think it's after seeing the property, it is a beautiful property. It's a grand property. It's just a really nice heritage building in our community, and I understand the need for intensification, densification, but I think we should do what we can to protect some of these properties that that are disappearing quickly, frankly. Sandra, John, any comments?
Yes, the comment that occurs to me, Jeff, is that does the council have any jurisdiction over the type of property? For example, as Neil was mentioning earlier, if there was to be a property there and it couldn't be avoided, could the town dictate the architecture to make sure that it was complementary to the chateau itself, so it looks like part of the chateau, even though it wasn't?
I think that's a question that I'll direct to Carlson.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So in the future, when this property, the severed property be developed, it will be subject to the regular site plan review process, where staff will be given an opportunity to review the design, and also the proposed developments will go to council for be circulated to council for comments. And we will also ensure that this the future proposal gets circulated to the Heritage Advisory Committee for comments as well, due to the heritage implications.
Thank you, Carlton. Are there any other comments?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Sandra.
Just through Mr. Major, everything has been said. I just wanted to say I support my colleagues' comments in this. And again, just wanted to say thanks again for highlighting and having this going to be officially designated. That's exciting, and looking forward to moving forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's also important to recognize the work that Wayne has done. I think that was a very comprehensive analysis. It helps make a decision and provides quite a bit of context. And I just would like to recognize that the work that Wayne's done to prepare for this item.
Absolutely.
So if we have no more comments, questions, or discussion points at this time, I'll call a vote.
I do.
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Neil. Yeah,
I just want to speak further, you know, I'm leaning towards designation, and I'll explain why. That I think that by having the large setback from Yonge Street, and the lot being only what I can see would be about 40 feet wide, or what looks to be about 12.5 meters, or no, maybe I'm making a mistake here. It's about 15 meters, so just under 50 feet wide. In terms of the intensification, you know, initiative, I don't know that this is really going to make quite a dent in the intensification goal, with a height restriction and with quite a narrow lot. And on that alone, I think that maybe sacrificing the symmetry, the park setting, all of that we're not getting anything in return. And so I think I support designation, but I do want to make an amendment to the designation that was put forth in December, where the interior elements were included. And back then I was going to speak to that, but since Mr. Morgan has made the case for the interior elements being protected as well, I think that needs to be part of the designation. And as much as I understand and I see the importance of having an easement, I really would hope that as a town we can manage this property, this heritage asset, as you know, and that any alterations would definitely be considered going forward, as they should be. So I'm also going to support the designation on those terms.
Thank you, Neil. Okay, we will call a vote, and I will ask for all those in favor of the recommendation.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. Opposed? Okay, it carried. So I think that brings us to item number 4 under matters for consideration. Or no further delegations this evening. Item number 4, HAC 20-008, Streetscape Improvements for the Northeast Old Aurora Heritage Conservation District. Recommendation is that report number HAC 20-008 be received and that the Heritage Advisory Committee's comments regarding streetscape improvements for the Northeast Old Aurora Heritage Conservation District plan be received and referred to staff for consideration and action as appropriate. Can we have a motion, please?
Excuse me, Jeff, it's Linda.
Go ahead, Linda.
Hi. It seems we don't really have a quorum for this item because both you and Bob, who has now left the meeting, declared an interest, so that only leaves us with 3, and we need 4 for quorum unless Mayor Maracus is able to join us, and we can include him in the count for this item.
Okay.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Linda. That would be Linda. That would be up to you and what you guys decide, or even the chair decides. I have no problem sitting in on this to get quorum as long as that's what the committee wants.
I think that's appropriate. I think it's appropriate at this time to ask Mayor to sit in on this item as opposed to deferring it to the next meeting. I would assume that's the alternate option. Linda?
That would be much appreciated.
But I would.
Okay. So.
Jeff, I would just suggest that maybe you poll the members. So if Neil, John, and Sandra feel the same way, then I will sit in. If they would prefer that it gets deferred, then I would suggest that maybe you guys defer it.
No,
Okay.
I the mayor being part of it.
John and Neil, any concerns with that?
No.
Nope.
So that being the case, is it appropriate for me to chair this item, or shall I step back and hand that over to one of my colleagues on this committee?
Yes, that's true.
Sam?
Well, I would be happy to request if Neil would be so willing to lead the group on this item.
Sorry, me? Did I hear my name? Sorry.
Would you mind standing in for me since my vice chair is absent this evening? I think it'll be a fairly straightforward discussion, and there's not too many of us who are participating now. So.
Okay. All right.
So Linda, maybe you could just Neil.
Okay.
Give me 1 second here to shift my papers around. Okay, so what am I doing, Linda? Am I just
we could ask, well, we should put the item on the floor. So we need a mover and a seconder. And
Item? Sandra, with the item?
okay? Sandra, seconder. John?
I'll second, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so that we received the report, HAC 20-008.
Right.
Okay, and now we'll just open it up for
and,
discussion.
well, and any comments as well. Does staff have any comments to make? Carlson?
Yes, so through Mr. Chair, Linda, should I make a brief kind of presentation just to give some context about the item, or should we jump right into the discussion?
No, I think it would be good if you started with some context.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I could do that. So this item is to provide the committee with a status updates on the implementation of the streetscape improvement recommendations in the Northeast Old Aurora Heritage Conservation District plans. So the town has completed some of its recommendations. For example, we have imprinted the district's name on the eastern sidewalk on Spruce Street. We have also undertaken road and surfacing improvement along sections of Spruce, Walton, and Center Streets. We have issued heritage plaques for a number of properties within the Heritage District. And we have also opened sections of Yonge Street for on-street parking during off-peak hours. If you look at page 7 to 11 of the report, you will see pictures showing how these recommendations were implemented. However, There are still a number of recommendations that have not been implemented due to the lack of budget. For example, the installation of heritage signage in the neighborhood. Just some background information. In 2007, the Heritage Committee did establish a program to install streets and entry signs in the neighborhoods. But however, this project did not make any significant progress. And over time, eventually this project was abandoned. Unfortunately, I was not able to recover records as to why this project did not make it through. The second recommendation that did not get implemented is the burying of utility lines. Now, the reason why we have not implemented this recommendation is because this would require a very substantial cost, and the undertaking will also cost damages to the recently improved sidewalks in different sections of the neighborhood. And we have spoken with the Capital Division, which they indicate that this option has not been contemplated due to the financial constraints. And another recommendation that has not been implemented is the installation of heritage street lights. Just some background, when the town planned for reconstruction of various streets between 2000 and 2010, council did direct staff to survey the local residents to see if they would support the installation of heritage street lights through a local improvement project. This means that the town will undertake the project and later recover all or partial of the cost from benefiting residents. So a survey was sent out to the local residents. However, the project did not get enough support, and council made the decision to abandon this initiative. So you can see that most of the recommendations that did not get implemented is really due to a budget constraint. There is currently no budget available to implement the remaining streetscape improvement recommendations. Now, if the committee feels that appropriate, if council feels it is appropriate, council can provide staff direction to undertake a cost analysis to determine the estimate costs of the undertaking, and then staff can prepare a recommendation report for council's consideration as part of the next budget cycle. And that's all I have for now.
Great.
Okay, thank you. I guess I get a motion to receive.
I move that, John.
Thank you. That was John and Sandra.
Yes.
Okay, and now I guess we'll open it up for discussion.
Mr. Chair, I have through you, if I may.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you for this update. It looks like it's been kind of on hold for a little while. We should get it back out in front of council. I understand some of the initiatives are quite costly, but I would like to recommend that staff, if possible, go back and prepare cost estimates for the initiatives. It's part of the district plan, the Heritage Conservation District plan. It was set out to be implemented, so I would suggest we move forward. And I'm sure, the hefty, to bury the utility wires may be something astronomical, but we should still understand what that is. Absolutely, the decorative street lights, the signage, these things should really move forward. These different things, because it is a designated heritage district, and I believe but we do need to continue to honor our heritage and our plan. So I would like to.
Sandra?
Yep,
sorry to interrupt you. Can you just back up a bit? I, for one, didn't hear your last comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cut out. No?
Yeah. Thanks, Neil. I will say, all I'm just suggesting is that I'd like to see these initiatives move forward. It's just part of the Heritage District plan that was set out, back in 2007, and it should continue to move forward. There is a note here that we have that these considerations be placed into the 2021 budget. We're going to be doing that shortly. We're doing public consultation this Tuesday. Would love to have us ready for this, for these initiatives to be included in next year's budget, including the bearing the utility wires. It may be astronomical, like mentioned earlier, but I do believe that it's something that we should follow through on and plan for. It could be in very, in many years from now, but we still should understand that. So for me, I want to thank staff for putting this report together, bringing it forward, and seeing where we can take this to the next step with putting into the 2021 budget.
Okay.
So thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Sandra. John, I saw your hand up.
No, you must have mistaken that. That's the other John, I guess. But what did occur to me, and I hadn't heard anything about it, was there not a move a couple of years back regarding the northeast section there for traffic calming? People were rather angry with it and they wanted it removed. Was that part of the streetscape improvement?
Mr. Chair, sorry, was John asking if any traffic measures were implemented? I kind of missed his question.
Yes, the removal of some of this traffic calming. I think some people were rather upset with it, and there was I think a proposal at one time to remove some of these traffic calming implementations. Did that ever get brought forward, or?
Through Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of this, but I will look into this. My understanding is the traffic calming measures were one of the recommendations recommended in the Heritage District Plan to calm the traffic that comes from the Aurora GO station. I'm not aware that there's residents complaining about the speed bumps, but I will look into this. Perhaps I need to speak to the Capital Division just to get more information.
Mr. Chair, I can answer that if you'd like.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. So John, the traffic calming, when it was put in place, I think it was 2008, maybe 9. It stayed in for a while. Council, not last term, the term before, actually removed the chicanes.
Okay.
That was the biggest problem that they were hearing. So they removed all the chicanes. They left, there's a few speed humps, and there's the one way along Center Street that has remained. There's been no, most of the residents in that area feel that it's still needed, and also the one-way direction that runs through to Catherine that stops people from cutting right through from Yonge Street. So that remains as most of the residents still wanted to keep that aspect of the traffic calming.
Okay, thanks, Tom, for the update.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other comments?
Actually, Mr. Chair, I just quick few comments for you. I see there's some value in having staff maybe prepare at least the cost analysis of all of them. While I don't agree with every single one, I think that maybe if it comes at least in front of council and also to this committee with at least the budget implications, and then we can decide once we see what those numbers are. I don't think anyone's really going to go with the underground utility lines, but I think if we see the cost, at least we can have an understanding of what the cost would be. I think if we get that 30,000 foot level analysis to be able to make that judgment call. Heritage streetlights, I think that some of it might have changed what some of the area residents might have thought back in 2002, 2003, maybe even 2010. That might have changed to now, and there might be a push to say let's move towards that. So I can see that useful. And then I just wanted to bring up something that is not necessarily discussed in this, but council passed a motion to do murals on the retaining walls from Aurora Heights to Kennedy, and one of them obviously would be right in front of Our Lady of Grace. And I think that may be something that could come to this committee, would be to have a discussion how that could actually be dedicated and commemorate the Heritage District. Maybe that's a signage with paintings that use our local artists, and they develop artwork that kind of speaks to our heritage within the town and that district area, and maybe the words right across that say Aurora Aurora Heritage Northeast District along there with lots of photos and paintings of buildings that we would like to commemorate in that area. So that might be something that maybe could come for a discussion once staff come back with those terms of reference for how we're going to move forward with that. So that, I mean, hopefully this committee will look forward to getting that, and we can discuss that as part of this streetscape analysis moving forward.
Okay, thank you. I have one question, Carlson. If we were to bury the cables, is there a shared cost with the utility, or is this the town's cost to bear and the residents of the neighborhood?
Through Mr. Chair, unfortunately, I don't have an answer to this question because
Okay.
this is normally something that will be led by the capital delivery divisions. But I will get in touch with them to get more information, and then I'll get back to the Heritage Committee for sure.
And I would imagine it would require some outreach to the individual residents to see if they were willing
Right.
to undertake this, because it may involve an alteration to the home, depending how
Right.
their mast is configured, you know, through a soffit or otherwise. But okay, thank you. So, anyone else? Shall we call a vote?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Okay. So that we what are we calling a vote on here? That we take our comments to be referred to staff and action as appropriate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries. Thank you. And I guess I will revert the chair back to you, Jeff.
I was enjoying my break, Neil. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mayor.
And I guess I'll sit out.
Thank you, Mayor, for stepping in.
You're welcome.
So that is all for matters for consideration for the evening. Moving on to agenda item number 6, informational items, and we have no informational items for this evening. So moving on to agenda item number 7, adjournment. Prior to adjournment, I just would like to thank the group for making themselves available, for your patience and understanding during the minor technical difficulties we had a couple of times during this call. It's obviously an unprecedented time and something that we're all adjusting to. And I personally want to thank Samantha and Linda and Carlson and others who have helped us quickly get online and understand how to use this in this new world that we live in. So huge thank you to that group and to everyone who was able to attend tonight. May I have a motion to adjourn unless anyone has any other comments before we close?
Just wanted to echo what you said, Mr. Chair. Great job by staff, and thank you to everyone for coming tonight. And I think you did a great job as chair, and Neil as well, honestly, in this new world of technology. Great job done. Thank you.
So Sandra, that being said, why don't we have you with that first motion while you're in San Francisco?
No problem.
All right, and if we can get someone to second that to adjourn the meeting for this evening.
John?
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Then that carries. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening, and we will be in touch soon.
Indeed.
Okay.